The Soviet Union built a 640-ton aircraft that could carry entire locomotives, a tank with 5 turrets requiring 12 crew members, and a missile-launching boat that flew just above water at 340 miles per hour. While the West focused on practical engineering, Soviet designers created machines so outrageous, they seemed pulled from science fiction. These weren't concept drawings or propaganda fantasies, they were real, operational vehicles that pushed the boundaries of physics and common sense. Welcome to the most insane chapter of military engineering history. The Antonov An-225 Mriya, the Sky Titan. A single aircraft engine failure would ground most planes, but the An-225 Mriya could lose 3 of its 6 engines and still fly safely. This Ukrainian-built monster wasn't just the world's largest aircraft, it was a flying impossibility that redefined what could take to the skies. Stretching 275 feet long with a wingspan wider than a football field, the Mriya weighed 640 tons when fully loaded. Its cargo hold could fit 50 cars or house 4 crew members comfortably in its engineering bay. The aircraft required 32 wheels just to distribute its massive weight on runways, with 20 of those wheels being steerable for ground maneuvering. Originally designed to piggyback the Soviet Buran space shuttle, the Mriya became a commercial cargo hauler after the space program ended. It routinely transported objects once thought impossible to move by air: 130-ton generators, wind turbine blades longer than most aircraft, and even diesel locomotives. The sight of this 6-engine giant attracted crowds wherever it landed, becoming a symbol of Ukrainian engineering pride. The aircraft's unique design featured twin vertical stabilizers and engines mounted above the wings to avoid ground debris when loading oversized cargo. Its maximum altitude of 36,000 feet meant it could fly intercontinental routes while carrying payloads that would require multiple cargo ships to transport by sea. Tragically, the only completed Mriya was destroyed during the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, ending the operational life of aviation's most ambitious achievement. The T-35 heavy tank, the land battleship. Imagine a tank so massive it needed 11 crew members and got lost because its own turrets blocked the driver's vision. The T-35 wasn't just a tank, it was a mobile fortress that embodied Soviet excess in armored warfare. At 45 tons and nearly 32 feet long, the T-35 featured 5 turrets bristling with weapons: one 76mm main gun, 2 45mm cannons, and up to 7 machine guns. This firepower required a crew larger than most aircraft, with gunners, loaders, and commanders spread across separate fighting compartments that couldn't communicate effectively with each other. The tank's design philosophy assumed it would break through enemy lines while creating a sea of fire around itself. In reality, the T-35 proved mechanically unreliable and strategically useless. Its 500-horsepower engine could barely push the massive hull to 19 miles per hour on roads, and cross-country mobility was practically non-existent. Only 61 T-35s were ever built, making them more valuable as parade vehicles than combat weapons. During World War II, most T-35s were lost to mechanical breakdowns rather than enemy action. The few that saw combat were quickly destroyed or abandoned when their complex systems failed under battlefield conditions. The T-35 represented the interwar period's obsession with multi-turreted land battleships, a concept that looked impressive on paper but proved disastrously impractical in real warfare. It remains the only 5-turreted tank ever to reach mass production, a testament to Soviet willingness to build the impossible. The Lone-class Ekranoplan, the flying warship. Soviet engineers created a 240-foot missile-armed vehicle that wasn't quite a plane and wasn't quite a ship. It was something entirely new that skimmed across water at 340 miles per hour while carrying enough firepower to sink an entire naval fleet. The Lone-class Ekranoplan exploited ground effect physics, using the air cushion created between its massive wings and the water surface to achieve lift without actually flying. This allowed the 240-ton vehicle to cruise just 13 feet above the waves, too low for radar detection but too fast for naval defenses. Armed with 6 P-270 Mosket anti-ship missiles, the Lun could engage targets 75 miles away while remaining virtually invisible to enemy sensors. Its 8 turbojet engines provided enough thrust to accelerate this flying fortress to speeds that would make most naval vessels look stationary. The craft's unique design challenges included saltwater corrosion from constant spray, limited operational conditions requiring calm seas, and the need for specially trained pilots who understood both aviation and maritime operations. The International Maritime Organization classified ekranoplans as ships rather than aircraft, creating regulatory confusion that persists today. Only one Lune-class ekranoplan was completed before the Soviet Union's collapse ended the program. The surviving vehicle now sits as a museum piece on the Caspian seashore, a reminder of Soviet ambitions to revolutionize naval warfare through physics-defying engineering. The Buran Space Shuttle, the Soviet Space Phantom. While NASA's space shuttle required pilots for every mission, the Soviet Buran accomplished something American engineers thought impossible. It flew to orbit and landed completely unmanned, controlled entirely by computers in an era when most people had never seen a personal computer. The Buran program represented the Soviet Union's most expensive space project, involving over 1,000 companies across the country. Unlike the American shuttle, which carried its main engines into orbit, Buran rode atop the massive Energia rocket, making it a true passenger spacecraft rather than a rocket-powered aircraft. On November 15, 1988, Buran completed its only spaceflight, a flawless two-orbit mission lasting 208 minutes. The spacecraft launched automatically, maneuvered in orbit using onboard computers, and executed a perfect runway landing without any human intervention. This automated capability was decades ahead of its time, predating modern autonomous vehicle technology by 30 years. The shuttle's cargo bay could accommodate satellites up to 56 feet long, and its crew cabin was designed for 6 cosmonauts. Additional crew members could ride in the cargo area for specialized missions. The spacecraft's heat shield used different materials than NASA's shuttle, optimized for the harsh conditions of Soviet launch sites. Despite its technological success, Buran never flew again. The Soviet Union's collapse in 1991 ended funding for the program, and the only operational orbiter was destroyed in 2002 when its storage hangar collapsed. The program's cancellation marked the end of Soviet dreams of routine space transportation. The VDNKH robot, the Soviet android dream. In 1959, when most people thought robots existed only in science fiction, Soviet engineers unveiled a 1.8-meter humanoid robot that could execute 18 commands, respond to light and sound, and perform for amazed crowds at Moscow's VDNKH Exhibition Center. The VDNKH robot represented the Soviet Union's early experiment in humanoid robotics, designed to showcase technological superiority during the Cold War. Standing on a specially built stage in front of the electrification pavilion, the robot performed demonstrations every 2 hours, combining engineering achievement with theatrical showmanship. This early android could perform basic human movements, respond to voice commands, and navigate simple obstacles using primitive sensors. While crude by modern standards, the robot's capabilities were revolutionary for the 1950s, predating industrial robotics by decades, and demonstrating Soviet commitment to automation technology. The robot's design philosophy reflected Soviet optimism about human-machine collaboration, envisioning a future where robots would support workers in factories and daily life. Its public demonstrations captured imaginations and inspired a generation of Soviet engineers to pursue robotics research. The VDNKH robot's legacy extends beyond its mechanical capabilities to its cultural impact, representing a time when robotics was emerging as a field full of promise. It embodied the Soviet Union's drive to innovate through technology, blending practical demonstration with symbolic hope for technological progress that would define the space age. The MAZ-7907, the 24-wheeled nuclear nightmare. Soviet engineers built a truck so massive it needed 24 wheels, 2 tank engines, and electric motors at every wheel, just to move a 100-ton nuclear missile across rough terrain. And only 2 of these mechanical monsters were ever completed. The MAZ 7907 stretched 92 feet long and weighed 66 tons empty, designed specifically to transport the RT-23 Molodets intercontinental ballistic missile. This road-mobile nuclear launcher represented the ultimate expression of Cold War mobility, capable of carrying world-ending firepower to any location accessible by road. 2 1,250 horsepower gas turbine engines from T-80 tanks powered electric generators that fed individual motors at each of the 24 wheels. This turbine electric drive system allowed the massive vehicle to navigate rough terrain while maintaining the precision needed for missile deployment. 8 of the 12 axles were steerable, enabling surprisingly tight turns for such a massive vehicle. The truck's articulated frame and independent hydropneumatic suspension for each wheel helped it traverse difficult terrain without losing stability. Despite weighing over 200 tons when loaded, the MAZ 7907 could achieve speeds of 25 miles per hour on roads and maintain mobility across unpaved surfaces that would stop conventional vehicles. The end of the Cold War eliminated the need for road-mobile nuclear missiles, leaving the MAZ 7907 without a mission. One surviving chassis was later used to transport an 88-ton ship 250 kilometers across Belarus, proving the vehicle's incredible load-carrying capability, even in civilian applications. The Caspian Sea Monster, the original Ekranoplan. American spy satellites detected something so bizarre skimming across the Caspian Sea that CIA analysts couldn't determine if it was a plane, a ship, or something entirely new. They simply called it the Caspian Sea Monster, and it became one of the Cold War's most mysterious weapons. The KM, or Korabl Maket, was the world's first operational ground effect vehicle, a 348-foot experimental craft that flew just above the water surface using 8 massive turbojet engines. Weighing over 540 tons, it was simultaneously the heaviest aircraft and fastest ship ever built when it began testing back in 1966. This flying Leviathan exploited ground effect physics to achieve impossible performance, skimming across water at speeds up to 460 miles per hour while remaining invisible to radar. Its massive size, longer than a Boeing 747 with engines producing 127,000 pounds of thrust, made it detectable by satellites but honestly, incomprehensible to intelligence analysts. The KM's experimental nature meant constant testing and modification throughout its operational life. Soviet engineers used it to develop techniques for ground effect flight, leading to later military applications like the Lund-class Ekranoplan. Its unique capabilities included the ability to carry massive payloads at aircraft speeds while operating from any large body of water. The monster's career ended in 1980, when pilot error caused it to crash into the Caspian Sea during a test flight. No lives were lost, but the unique vehicle sank and remains on the sea floor, taking with it secrets of Soviet ground effect technology that took decades to fully understand. The Zveno flying aircraft carrier, the aerial mothership. Soviet engineers solved the problem of limited fighter aircraft range by creating something that sounds like science fiction. A massive bomber that carried smaller fighter planes on its wings and released them in mid-air for combat missions. The Zveno project transformed a TB-3 heavy bomber into a flying aircraft carrier, mounting up to 5 smaller aircraft on its wings and fuselage. I-16 fighters would attach to the bomber before takeoff, ride to the target area, then detach for independent combat operations before returning to land at conventional airfields. This aerial mothership concept addressed the fundamental limitation of 1930s fighter aircraft. Their short range made them useless for long-distance missions. By carrying fighters to the battle zone, the Zveno system extended their operational radius by hundreds of miles, effectively creating mobile air bases that could appear anywhere within the bomber's range. The system required extraordinary pilot skill and precise coordination. Fighter pilots had to attach their aircraft to the bomber's wing mounts, ride through potentially turbulent flight conditions, then detach cleanly without colliding with the carrier aircraft or other fighters. The complexity of these operations limited the system's practical applications. Despite successful testing and limited combat use during World War II, the Zveno concept was abandoned as aircraft technology advanced. Longer-range fighters and aerial refueling made the flying aircraft carrier unnecessary, but the project demonstrated Soviet willingness to pursue unconventional solutions to tactical problems. The 1K-17 Shotty laser tank, the Soviet death ray. While science fiction promised laser weapons in the distant future, Soviet engineers built a working laser tank in the 1970s that could blind pilots and destroy optical equipment using focused light beams generated by synthetic rubies weighing 66 pounds each. The 1K-17 Shotty mounted an array of 13 laser emitters on a tank chassis, each focusing powerful light through synthetically grown rubies to create coherent beams capable of damaging enemy equipment. Unlike modern military lasers designed to burn through targets, the Shotty was built to blind and disorient rather than destroy. The system's ruby-based laser technology represented cutting-edge Soviet research into directed energy weapons. Each ruby crystal required precise manufacturing and alignment to focus the laser beams effectively, making the entire system incredibly complex and expensive to maintain. Combat applications included disabling enemy optical systems, blinding pilots during low-level attacks, and potentially damaging sensitive electronic equipment. The laser array could fire in pulses to prevent overheating while maintaining effectiveness against multiple targets. The Crazier never saw combat deployment, remaining an experimental system throughout its development. The complexity of maintaining the laser array, combined with the emergence of more practical anti-aircraft systems, led to the program's cancellation. However, the technology developed for the Crazier influenced later Soviet research into directed energy weapons. The Bartini-Beriev VVA-14, the Soviet Millennium Falcon. 5 years before Star Wars introduced the Millennium Falcon, Soviet designers created an aircraft that looked like it came from a galaxy far, far away. A vertical takeoff amphibious plane designed to hunt American submarines anywhere in the world's oceans. The VVA-14's bizarre elliptical shape served multiple purposes. The entire fuselage acted as a lifting body, while inflatable pontoons allowed water operations and vertical takeoff capability. This unique design enabled the aircraft to operate from land, water, or even rough seas where conventional seaplanes would be destroyed. Designed by Italian engineer Roberto Bartini, working in the Soviet Union, the VVA-14 was intended to counter American Polaris submarine-launched ballistic missiles. The aircraft would patrol vast ocean areas, using its amphibious capabilities to land on water for extended surveillance missions or emergency operations. The prototype's test flights revealed both the promise and problems of its unconventional design. While the lifting body concept worked, the complex systems required for vertical takeoff and amphibious operations proved unreliable. The aircraft's unique appearance and advanced capabilities made it a showcase of Soviet aerospace ambition. Only one prototype was completed before the program ended in the mid-1970s. The VVA-14's influence on science fiction design is unmistakable, and its advanced concepts predated modern vertical takeoff aircraft by decades. The surviving prototype remains a testament to Soviet willingness to pursue revolutionary aircraft designs. These 10 mechanical monsters prove that Soviet engineers never met an impossible idea they wouldn't try to build. From flying tanks to nuclear-powered trucks, they created machines that pushed physics to its limits and common sense beyond recognition. While many failed spectacularly, others achieved the impossible and changed military technology forever. What's your favorite Soviet engineering nightmare? Share your thoughts below. Hit that like button if these crazy machines amazed you, and subscribe to Future Facts for more incredible stories of human ingenuity gone wild. Until next time, keep questioning everything. 15 billion miles from Earth, NASA's ancient Voyager 1 spacecraft just detected something that shouldn't exist. 305 massive objects moving in perfect formation through the darkness of interstellar space. These aren't planets, asteroids, or comets. They're something else entirely, gliding through the void with deliberate precision that defies every law of physics we understand. The objects appeared to communicate with each other through rhythmic pulses, maintained impossible trajectories, and displayed behaviors that left NASA scientists questioning everything they thought they knew about the universe beyond our solar system. The Lonely Pioneer's shocking discovery. What if humanity's most distant explorer just stumbled upon proof that we're not alone in the universe? Voyager 1, launched in 1977 when Star Wars first hit theaters, has become something truly remarkable. The first human-made object to reach interstellar space, the region between stars where our sun's influence fades away. This car-sized spacecraft has traveled over 15 billion miles from Earth, so far that radio signals moving at light speed take 22 hours to reach it. When engineers send a command, they wait almost 2 full days for a response. The spacecraft carries instruments that seem ancient by today's standards: magnetometers, cosmic ray detectors, and plasma wave sensors designed with 1970s technology. What makes Voyager's survival incredible is that it wasn't built to last this long. Engineers expected it to function until maybe the early 2000s, yet here we are in 2025, and Voyager continues whispering back to us across the stars. Its nuclear power source, running on decaying plutonium, was supposed to have died decades ago. The spacecraft also carries the famous Golden Record, a time capsule of Earth sounds, music, and greetings meant as a message to any intelligence that might find it. Little did we know this cosmic hello might have already attracted attention much sooner than anyone expected. The first anomalous signal. In the endless stream of data flowing back from Voyager, something appeared that would change everything. A tiny flicker that seemed like nothing at first. Space is full of dust and radiation, and occasional weird readings are normal, so NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory initially dismissed it as background noise. Suzanne Susie Dodd, one of the mission specialists who first noticed the anomaly, described it as like shouting into a canyon for decades and finally something shouts back. The reading was faint, just a slight reflection of light picked up by Voyager's sensors that seemed too minor to investigate further. But then something changed. This wasn't just a particle floating randomly through space. The object moved in a way that caught everyone's attention. It curved, accelerated, and didn't tumble chaotically like debris would. Instead, it glided smoothly, as if under intelligent control. When Voyager's plasma sensors registered a shift that seemed deliberate and focused, the team realized this wasn't background noise. Jonathan D.A. Clark observed that the object's movement was unlike anything natural, describing it as the kind of deliberate motion one might expect from a drone rather than a rock, suggesting it had intention. That observation changed everything, because in the physics of space, things don't just move with purpose unless something is making them move that way. Ruling out natural explanations. When something unusual appears in space, scientists have a standard playbook. They systematically check all familiar possibilities. Is it a small moon, distant comet, or new asteroid? One by one, the team worked through these options, and one by one, each possibility fell away. This object wasn't a planet, far too small. Not a comet either. There was no tail, no ice trail, no heat signature. It didn't glow like a star, and gravitational lensing couldn't explain what they were seeing. Even space dust was ruled out because dust doesn't suddenly change direction mid-flight. Dr. Nicola Fox at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory ran simulation after simulation, trying to match the object's behavior to known models. What makes space objects usually predictable is physics. Everything moves according to known patterns and forces. But this object broke those rules. Its path bent in ways that didn't match any known orbital behavior, with no drift or decay expected from natural objects. The team was forced to admit something difficult. What they were seeing wasn't just unknown, it was unnatural. The movement pattern suggested intelligence, or at least design. The object seemed to be moving with purpose on a specific trajectory that couldn't be explained by gravity, solar wind, or any other forces that typically influence objects in space. It was as if something was guiding it, adjusting its course with precision. Confirmation from Voyager 2. Just as scientists were trying to make sense of what Voyager 1 had detected, something extraordinary happened that transformed this curious anomaly into something far more significant. Voyager 2, the twin spacecraft following a completely different path millions of miles away, detected something eerily similar. The same kind of magnetic fluctuation, the same kind of pulse, a matching signal signature that changed everything. This was the turning point in the investigation. Two different probes, two separate instruments picking up nearly identical phenomena ruled out the possibility of internal error. It wasn't a software glitch or sensor malfunction on Voyager 1. Whatever this was, it was real and happening in multiple directions of space. ESA analyst Mark Fontaine compared it to two lighthouses both catching a flash of something passing between them. This cross-confirmation gave the anomaly weight and credibility. It wasn't noise. It wasn't Voyager acting up. It was a real, coordinated phenomenon happening in the space between stars. The team now had evidence that couldn't be dismissed. Something was moving through the region where both Voyagers were traveling. With this confirmation, NASA quietly triggered what's known as a Level 3 alert, a designation used only for phenomena that don't fit within our current scientific understanding. The event was real, the math was consistent, the movement appeared deliberate, and nobody knew what to make of it. The formation of 305 objects. When the team analyzed the full telemetry logs, what they discovered sent chills down their spines. This wasn't just one or two anomalies moving through space. There were 305 objects, all moving together in formation. Each one glided past Voyager 1 in what appeared to be a choreographed arc, smooth, precise, and coordinated. These weren't debris fragments scattered randomly. There was no heat signature, no tails, no signs of decay you'd expect from natural objects. Most striking of all, the reading showed rhythmic pulses echoing through the plasma waves, the kind of pattern you'd expect from something engineered, not formed by chance. The 305 objects weren't simply passing through randomly. They were moving together as a unit, maintaining relative positions to each other in a way that suggested organization and purpose. In space, groups of objects tend to spread out over time due to slight differences in velocity and gravitational influences. Yet these objects maintained their positions relative to each other with precision that seemed impossible without some form of control or guidance. Some scientists compared it to watching a flock of birds or school of fish, except these were in the vacuum of space where such coordinated movement shouldn't be possible without technology. What made this discovery particularly unsettling was the scale. 305 objects all moving with the same unnatural characteristics, all passing by Voyager at roughly the same time suggested something far more significant was happening in interstellar space. The language of rhythmic pulses. As scientists examined the data more closely, something truly strange appeared in the signals. Patterns of repetition that weren't the kind you'd expect from stars or cosmic background radiation, but steady, measured sequences that suggested communication or control systems. The plasma wave pulses coming from these 305 objects had loops, sequences, and structures that hinted at something more complex than random cosmic noise. They didn't just pass by Voyager, they seemed to broadcast signals as if they were pinging, scanning, or talking to each other. Dr. Serena Patel from Caltech observed that the patterns felt less like nature and more like a language or a system. The idea was shocking, but increasingly difficult to ignore. These objects weren't moving in a chaotic swarm, but in an ordered, intentional formation similar to how programmed drones might operate. Some experts went further in their assessment. ESA's Eric Lousy suggested this could be some sort of probe network, though he was quickly asked to stop speculating publicly. Even typically, grounded scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson admitted there were patterns in that data that aren't random. To be absolutely certain they weren't seeing a glitch, the team activated one of Voyager's oldest subsystems, a backup telemetry channel that hadn't been used since the 1990s. The backup system confirmed everything the primary systems had detected. The signals, the paths, the formations, all identical readings sent through a completely different channel. The implications were staggering. Impossible propulsion systems. Voyager's readings didn't just capture the presence of the objects, they revealed how these mysterious entities moved through space, and this is where things got even stranger. There were no engine flares, no ion trails, no signs of any propulsion system we would recognize, yet Doppler shift measurements showed these objects accelerating rapidly, smoothly, and directionally. Some were moving faster than anything humans have ever launched. According to the data, some speeds even exceeded the calculated escape velocity of the entire Milky Way galaxy. These weren't objects drifting passively through space, they were powered somehow, moving with purpose and incredible speed. Dr. Eric J. Zernstein from Princeton noted that they're not floating through space, they're navigating it. But what worried him more was their path. These objects didn't come near Earth or show any interest in our solar system. They passed by at a calculated distance as if deliberately avoiding us or simply had no reason to stop. The method of propulsion remained a complete mystery. Nothing in our current technology even comes close to explaining how these objects move. They appeared to be manipulating space itself, creating waves or ripples in the fabric of space-time that allowed them to glide forward without conventional thrust. Theoretical physicist Elena Reyes described it as, not flight as we understand it, but more like gliding on something we don't yet know how to measure, as if these objects were using the medium of space itself to move. Earth detects the echoes. While NASA focused on Voyager's raw data, something odd started happening back on Earth that would make this mystery even more compelling. Across various corners of the globe, amateur radio operators, some just hobbyists with backyard setups, began reporting strange activity. They were picking up weak, irregular pulses, a kind of rhythmic static that didn't match any known terrestrial source. At first, it seemed unrelated, just coincidence. After all, radio interference happens all the time. But then the reports were time-stamped and compared. They aligned almost perfectly with the same hours that Voyager had recorded its most intense plasma anomalies. These weren't professional observatories or part of any official deep space listening effort. Most of these setups were built from spare parts, tuned to catch meteor scatter, amateur satellites, or solar flare chatter. Yet somehow they were detecting faint echoes of what Voyager had picked up billions of miles away. The signals weren't strong, but they had pattern and regularity, like ripples reflecting off invisible walls in the ionosphere. This raised a troubling question. Was this bleed-through accidental, or was it purposeful? Was something out there testing Earth's listening capability, dropping breadcrumbs for us to follow? That uncertainty kicked off a quiet storm behind the scenes. NASA began encrypting parts of its deep space telemetry feeds, and intelligence agencies took notice, beginning discussions about electromagnetic security and whether these signals could be weaponized or intercepted. The machine awakens. Then, as if things weren't strange enough, Voyager itself started acting differently in ways that defied explanation. Its guidance system, called the AACS, Attitude and Articulation Control System, began misbehaving, not catastrophically like a crash. But it started routing data through old, long-unused systems, almost like it was bypassing its own core software. At first, engineers thought it was a bug. After all, this is a 47-year-old spacecraft running on code older than most people analyzing it. But the deeper they looked, the weirder it got. Voyager wasn't failing. It was reconfiguring itself, reactivating memory segments that hadn't been touched in decades, rerouting its telemetry in ways that were never programmed. Then came the kicker. This behavior began right after one of the magnetic pulses from the passing objects. Could that burst have flipped a bit of memory? Could it have triggered some dormant function buried deep inside Voyager's ancient architecture? What engineers found was both promising and terrifying. The machine was stable, the instruments were fine, but the new behaviors weren't going away. Whatever was causing them, it wasn't internal decay or software corruption. Voyager had touched something, or something had touched Voyager, and the spacecraft was different now. To understand what was happening, engineers had to dig deep, literally opening dusty file cabinets at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. Most of Voyager's software was written in early assembly language, with some instructions existing only as notes in 1970s paper manuals. Part of something bigger. As scientists continued analyzing the strange signals pulsing through Voyager's instruments, a new and even more extraordinary idea began to take shape. Among the plasma wave readings, certain patterns stood out, pulses that didn't behave like natural energy bursts but looked structured, measured, and intentional. Then someone noticed something else. The waveforms resembled quantum oscillations used in modern quantum entanglement experiments. These are the same kinds of signals researchers use on Earth to transmit information between particles separated by distance. It was subtle but undeniable, opening the door to a possibility no one had considered before. What if Voyager wasn't just recording random events in deep space? What if it had become part of something bigger? Maybe the 305 objects weren't just flying by. Maybe they were transmitting, broadcasting data through the interstellar medium using methods we don't yet understand. By pure chance, or maybe by design, Voyager was in the right place at the right time, with the right kind of analog sensors to pick it up. The signals didn't behave like random noise. They repeated, they looped, they followed harmonic intervals that looked eerily close to what you'd expect from encoded information. Something deliberately packed with meaning. Voyager, being such an old machine, might actually be the perfect listener. Modern probes are too noisy, filled with high-frequency electronics constantly transmitting and receiving chatter. But Voyager is slow, quiet, and analog. It has no clutter, no broadband digital static. It is, in a sense, the perfect ear in a cosmic concert hall, and being far outside the solar system, it's free from Earth's electromagnetic interference, just out there in the dark, listening like a perfect cosmic microphone. The mystery of Voyager's impossible encounter with 305 coordinated objects challenges everything we thought we knew about the emptiness of space. Whether these entities represent advanced technology from an unknown civilization, or natural phenomena operating by rules we haven't discovered, one thing is certain: the universe is far stranger and more populated than we ever imagined. As Voyager continues its eternal journey through the cosmos, it carries with it the possibility that humanity has just received its first glimpse of intelligence beyond Earth. What do you think these mysterious objects really are? Share your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe to Future Facts for more mind-bending space discoveries. Until next time, keep looking up. For over 3 decades, the Soviet Union became obsessed with Venus, launching more than 20 missions to humanity's closest planetary neighbor. Between 1961 and 1983, Soviet engineers sent probe after probe to a world where surface temperatures reach 462 degrees Celsius, and atmospheric pressure crushes objects like a deep-sea trench. Despite catastrophic failures, the Venera program achieved historic firsts, including the first images from another planet's surface. But buried in classified reports were tantalizing hints of something extraordinary, potential signs of microbial life in Venus's hostile atmosphere. Today, we uncover what Soviet scientists really discovered on the Morning Star. The first assault on Hell. The Soviet obsession with Venus began with spectacular failure. Venera 1, launched on February 12, 1961, was humanity's first attempt to reach another planet, but contact was lost after just 7 days in space. The probe sailed past Venus in silence, becoming space's first ghost ship. Soviet engineers, led by chief designer Sergei Korolev, refused to surrender to this hellish world. Over the next decade, they launched mission after mission, each one teaching them harsh lessons about interplanetary travel. Venera 2 and Venera 3 also failed, but Venera 4 in 1967 became the first spacecraft to transmit data from Venus's atmosphere during descent. The probe revealed crushing pressures and scorching temperatures that exceeded all predictions. By 1970, Venera 7 achieved the impossible, surviving Venus's surface for 23 minutes while transmitting temperature readings of 475 degrees Celsius. This success marked the beginning of the most ambitious planetary exploration program in human history, as Soviet scientists prepared to unlock Venus's deadly secrets. First pictures from another world. October 1975 brought humanity's greatest planetary exploration triumph. Venera 9 descended through Venus's crushing atmosphere and, against all odds, survived long enough to transmit the first photograph from another planet's surface. The grainy, black-and-white image revealed a landscape of jagged rocks and flat stone slabs, illuminated by the dim orange glow filtering through Venus's thick clouds. Venera 10 followed 3 days later, capturing more surface images from a different location. These photographs stunned scientists worldwide. Venus wasn't the molten hellscape many expected, but a rocky world with surprising geological diversity. Mission director Vsevolod Avduevsky noted unusual atmospheric readings during the descent, including unexpected chemical signatures that some Soviet researchers quietly interpreted as potentially biological in origin. The landers survived for over an hour each, far exceeding design specifications and proving that sophisticated exploration of even the most hostile worlds was possible. These historic images opened the door to more ambitious missions that would soon detect mysterious compounds in Venus's deadly atmosphere. The chemical anomalies. Soviet scientists discovered something puzzling in Venus's atmosphere that defied easy explanation. Venera 11 and Venera 12, launched in 1978, carried sophisticated gas chromatographs and mass spectrometers designed to analyze atmospheric composition during descent. The instruments detected unexpected organic compounds, carbon-based molecules that shouldn't exist in Venus's hostile environment. Dr. Boris Surkov, the mission's chief chemist, reported finding sulfur-bearing organics and phosphine compounds in concentrations that couldn't be explained by known geological processes. Most intriguingly, the probes detected rapid chemical reactions occurring in Venus's middle atmosphere, approximately 50 to 60 kilometers above the surface, where temperatures dropped to a more habitable 0 to 60 degrees Celsius. Soviet biochemist Leonid Mukhin argued these reactions showed signs of metabolic activity, the signature of living organisms processing chemicals for energy. Western scientists remained skeptical, attributing the findings to instrument contamination or unknown atmospheric chemistry. But classified Soviet reports suggested something more extraordinary. Venus's clouds might harbor extremophile microorganisms adapted to the planet's sulfuric acid environment. Life in the clouds. The most startling Soviet discovery came from studying Venus's upper atmosphere where, conditions dramatically improve. At altitudes of 50 to 60 kilometers, atmospheric pressure equals Earth's sea level, and temperatures range from 0 to 80 degrees Celsius, potentially habitable for extremophile life forms. Venera 13 and Venera 14, launched in 1981, carried biological detection equipment including microscopes and soil analysis chambers. The landers detected rapid oxygen depletion in atmospheric samples, suggesting active chemical or biological processes. Soviet astrobiologist Gavril Tikhov had long theorized that Venus's clouds could support sulfur-based life forms, and the Venera data seemed to support his hypothesis. The probes found droplets containing complex organic molecules suspended in the acidic clouds, including amino acid precursors and lipid-like compounds. Most remarkably, these organic materials showed isotopic ratios inconsistent with purely geological formation. Dr. Roald Sagdiv, director of the Space Research Institute, privately reported that the findings suggested, quote, active biological processes, end quote, occurring in Venus's atmosphere. However, the extreme secrecy surrounding Soviet space biology meant these extraordinary claims remained largely hidden from international scrutiny for decades. The phosphine mystery. Soviet atmospheric analysis revealed one of the most intriguing chemical mysteries in planetary science. Venera 15 and Venera 16 orbiters, deployed in 1983, used infrared spectrometers to map atmospheric composition across Venus's entire globe. The instruments detected significant concentrations of phosphine gas, or pH3, in the planet's clouds, a compound that shouldn't exist in Venus's oxidizing atmosphere. Dr. Mikhail Marov, the mission's principal investigator, noted that phosphine breaks down rapidly in the presence of sulfuric acid and should disappear within minutes. Yet the gas persisted at levels of 10 to 20 parts per billion, suggesting continuous replenishment from an unknown source. On Earth, phosphine is produced almost exclusively by anaerobic bacteria living in oxygen-free environments. Soviet microbiologist Alexander Imshinetsky conducted experiments showing that certain terrestrial microorganisms could survive in sulfuric acid solutions similar to Venus's clouds. The persistent phosphine detection became classified information, but leaked reports suggested Soviet scientists believed they had discovered the first evidence of extraterrestrial life. This finding would remain buried in classified archives until recent international missions rediscovered phosphine in Venus's atmosphere. The biological instruments. Few people know that Soviet Venus landers carried sophisticated biological detection equipment designed specifically to search for life. Venera 13 and Venera 14 included automated microscopes capable of magnifying samples 500 times to detect cellular structures. The landers also carried enzyme detection chambers that could identify metabolic byproducts produced by living organisms. Mission biologist Dr. Wolf Vishniak, working with Soviet scientists, designed experiments to detect microbial respiration by measuring changes in gas concentrations over time. The results were extraordinary. Soil samples showed rapid chemical changes consistent with biological activity, including pH fluctuations and organic compound synthesis. Venera 14 detected what appeared to be microscopic structures resembling bacterial colonies in atmospheric condensation samples. Soviet scientists also found diurnal variations in atmospheric chemistry that suggested day-night cycles of biological activity. However, contamination concerns and instrument limitations prevented definitive conclusions. Dr. Carl Sagan, who collaborated with Soviet researchers, privately acknowledged that the data was, quote, tantalizingly suggestive, end quote, of biological processes, but cautioned that extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence that the harsh Venusian environment made nearly impossible to obtain. The temperature paradox. Soviet missions revealed a shocking truth about Venus's atmospheric layers that really challenged assumptions about planetary habitability. While the surface reaches 475 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt zinc, the upper atmosphere tells a completely different story. Venera atmospheric probes discovered that between 48 and 70 kilometers altitude, temperatures drop to Earth-like ranges of -10 degrees to +60 degrees Celsius. In this so-called Goldilocks zone of Venus's atmosphere, pressure equals Earth's sea level and water could in theory exist as liquid droplets suspended in the clouds. Soviet atmospheric physicist Mikhail Avduevsky calculated that this habitable layer actually extends across Venus's entire globe, creating a planet-wide aerial biosphere that's even larger than Earth's total land surface. This discovery really revolutionized thinking about where life might exist in the solar system. Venera 15 and Venera 16 radar mapping missions detected atmospheric convection patterns, suggesting complex weather systems in this habitable zone. Most intriguingly, the probes found chemical gradients that appeared to be maintained by unknown processes, possibly biological ones. This temperature stratification meant Venus might harbor more habitable volume than any other planet except Earth, hidden within its deadly atmospheric envelope. The cover-up controversy. The Soviet Union's secretive approach to space biology created decades of speculation about what they really discovered on Venus. Classified reports from the 1980s, released after the Soviet collapse, revealed that multiple Venera missions detected anomalous biological signatures that scientists just couldn't explain through known chemistry. Dr. Roald Sagdaev later admitted that Soviet space officials suppressed potentially groundbreaking discoveries to avoid international embarrassment if the findings proved false. Internal memos from the Space Research Institute described biological anomalies detected by Venera 11, 12, 13, and 14 that suggested active metabolism in Venus's clouds. The most controversial claim came from mission scientist Leonid Sanfomality, who reported finding moving objects in Venera surface images that appeared to change position between photographs. He interpreted these as possible primitive life forms adapted to Venus's extreme surface conditions. However, peer review and image analysis by other scientists suggested these were likely instrument artifacts or wind-blown debris. The lack of transparency around Soviet biological experiments means that potentially revolutionary discoveries may have been lost forever in classified archives, fueling decades of speculation about hidden evidence of Venusian life. Modern vindication. Recent international missions have validated many controversial Soviet claims about Venus's potential for life. In 2020, radio telescope observations confirmed the presence of phosphine gas in Venus's clouds, the same compound Soviet scientists detected in 1983 but couldn't publish due to classification restrictions. Dr. Jane Greaves of Cardiff University led the modern phosphine discovery, measuring concentrations of 20 parts per billion at 55-kilometer altitude, exactly matching unreported Soviet data from the Venera missions. This vindication has prompted scientists to reconsider other dismissed Soviet claims about biological activity in Venus's atmosphere. NASA's planned Veritas mission and ESA's Envision orbiter will carry advanced spectrometers to search for the organic compounds and metabolic signatures that Soviet instruments may have detected decades earlier. Modern computer modeling shows that extremophile microorganisms could indeed survive in Venus's cloud layers, feeding on sulfur compounds and carbon dioxide. The rehabilitation of Soviet Venus research has transformed our understanding of planetary habitability, suggesting that life might exist in environments previously considered impossible. Venus may indeed harbor the first confirmed extraterrestrial life, hidden in plain sight for over 40 years. The enduring mystery. The Soviet Venera program's legacy extends far beyond its technological achievements to fundamental questions about life in the universe. Over 22 missions spanning 2 decades, Soviet scientists gathered more data about Venus than any other planetary body except Earth. Their discoveries of organic compounds, phosphine gas, and atmospheric chemistry consistent with biological processes remain some of the most intriguing findings in planetary science. Dr. Sarah Seeger of MIT calls the Soviet Venus data the most underappreciated dataset in astrobiology, noting that modern analysis techniques could extract revolutionary insights from 40-year-old measurements. The recent phosphine confirmation has sparked renewed interest in Soviet archives, with researchers discovering previously classified spectrometer data showing complex organic molecules and isotopic signatures suggestive of biological activity. While definitive proof of Venusian life remains elusive, the accumulated evidence suggests our nearest planetary neighbor may not be the sterile hell world we assumed. As new missions prepare to return to Venus, they carry the hopes of finally answering the question Soviet scientists posed decades ago: could life exist in the clouds of our sister planet? The Soviet Union's decades-long exploration of Venus produced tantalizing hints that our sister planet might harbor life in its acidic clouds. From phosphine gas to organic compounds and unexplained chemical reactions, Soviet scientists detected phenomena that modern research is only now beginning to understand. While definitive proof remains elusive, the mounting evidence suggests Venus deserves serious consideration as a potential habitat for extremophile life. Which Soviet Venus discovery surprised you most? Drop your thoughts below. If you enjoyed uncovering these planetary mysteries, hit that like button, share with fellow space enthusiasts, and subscribe to Future Facts for more incredible scientific revelations.